I have seen some worrying things. One of the big things I'm deeply concerned about is I've done 2 major pieces of work with children about when they first saw violence online, when they first saw pornography online. And sadly, what I have to report to you, I surveyed every school in this country. I went round and about the country, into schools, into youth clubs, into mental health wards, into youth prisons. I talked to kids everywhere, and we put this survey out and we got the biggest response in the world. And it was pretty surprising and stunning and shocking, the responses were. We knew the impacts were going to be big, but we didn't know how big. I remember Secretaries of State for Education saying, that's it, hands up, okay, we've got to do something. The mental health issues were just thick and fast. We've seen this massive uptick in mental health concerns. When I go to children's hospitals A&E, it's kids with serious mental health concerns turning up in crisis. So mental health became a huge issue. There is something seriously wrong here.
What were the most obvious failings, would you say?
I think the second school closure was an unmitigated disaster and shouldn't have happened. Kids are still paying the price for that. That generation worries me a lot. Because mental health needs have skyrocketed so much, it's nowhere near enough. A huge uptick on children being diagnosed with autism and ADHD, huge uptick on mental health needs.
Are we learning the skills needed for the jobs in the world that we're going into?
What they want is a great job and a great future. And school leaders are often singularly unthinking about that. We don't know the world we live in. We look at Bonnie Blue and think, good Lord, that's awful. Where did that come from? But actually, get into those online influencer worlds, you will see that and 20 times worse. And I just knew things were never going to be the same again for children.
It's my belief that too many societal problems persist because we keep relying on the same ways of thinking. Question the Default exists to challenge the norms that shape our society, dismantling the status quo and exploring better alternatives for how we live and manage our health and well-being. Question the Default is for those who are driven to create a better future. If this mission resonates with you, please consider subscribing, liking or sharing. Every single small action helps us on our mission. Thank you. Today's guest is Dame Rachel de Souza, the Children's Commissioner for England. Her job is to promote and protect the rights of children, especially the most vulnerable, and to make sure that their voices are heard and the decisions are made with their voices in mind. That includes across government, parliament, and across policy. Before this role, Rachel spent more than 30 years in education, acting as a teacher and a head teacher. She stepped into the role of Children's Commissioner during one of the most turbulent times imaginable, the middle of lockdown, when schools were closed, social services were stretched, and millions of children were suddenly invisible to the systems designed to protect them. What I love about Rachel is that she's taken a role that could easily stay buried in bureaucracy and turned it into a voice for truth. She's listened to over 1 million children to understand what they really need, from mental health support and safe access to education to how we deal with the digital world that's now shaping their reality. This conversation goes deep into the impact of lockdown, and, of course, we talk about the dangers of social media and AI. And, of course, this most important question of how we are preparing young people for a world that's changing faster than ever before. It's a reminder that when it comes to the next generation, we can't just assume we know best. We have to listen. We have no other option. I hope you enjoy listening to this episode as much as I enjoyed being a part of it. Thank you. Welcome to the show, Dame Rachel de Souza. Thank you.
It's great to be here. Really excited for our conversation.
Thank you very much indeed. Well, the Children's Commissioner, it's a very grand title, very important title. Can you tell the listeners what that means?
Yeah, so look, I'm the Children's Commissioner for England. Before that, I was a teacher for 34 years, a head teacher for 20 years. And during lockdown, I decided I wanted to go for this job. This job started 20 years ago when a little girl called Victoria Climbié was murdered, was killed by those who were meant to care for her the most. So they created this role really to make sure that happened to no child again. And it's meant to take the voice of children to government, to parliament, to keep an eye right across the country, make sure children's voices are heard, and to represent them, to protect and promote their rights.
Amazing.
What a privilege,
What a privilege.
to have that job.
Bit of pressure.
6-year role it is. I'm in year 5 now, so I've done it for 4 years.
So at this stage, are you looking at kind of that kind of legacy? What can you remember in that time period? How long is it? 2 years roughly, you say?
So I've got about, I've done 4 years and I'm in my 5th year. So about 18 months to go. And although look, every day's something new and it doesn't stop. And I think that's what's important. But it is, I look back and I ask myself every day, have I done enough? Have we done enough? What more could we do? But the reason I went for it, it was right in the middle of lockdown. Schools closed and, you knew that social services had closed, that children were really vulnerable. And I just knew things were never going to be the same again for children. And that what we'd done before as teachers and head teachers to really try and kind of close the gap and do well for our kids was just not going to happen again in the future. It needed to be different. So that's why I took the job.
And you've experienced so much in that time. You talk about windows of time since COVID coming up to this point, how much has changed in the world of politics and tensions across the world, war, conflict.
Absolutely. Listen, there was 1 week where I had 3 secretaries of state for education and, 2 prime ministers, 3 prime ministers. Crazy. We've seen some crazy political change, but also, like I say, the world has changed from lockdown till now, and I think of children in the middle of that with, the internet and the media in their ear 24/7, seeing all of that. And it has to affect them, doesn't it? So I do think that kids are affected more than ever before, more than we were. I just used to play out and have fun,
Yeah, it's quite interesting that kind of nostalgia view on childhood. It was actually one of our guests just now. We were talking about actually what it means to be a young child now versus our childhood, and we were only looking back, a short window of time, and how much has changed and how much is going to change for kind of future generations. And I know when you came into role, you just said that COVID disrupted children's education, friendships, and mental health, and too often their voices weren't heard. So how was that leaning into that role at the time, arguably one of the most important periods we've ever had? What did you hear? What did you kind of sense on the ground?
Yeah, so I spent COVID in Cromer. I went to school every day and into one of my schools and saw, children for the first time with schools closed. They saw their schools closed. And that hadn't happened since the evacuation. And we knew the impacts were going to be big, but we didn't know how big. And I used to be deeply frustrated because I would see the Prime Minister, he'd come on the TV every day with Chris Whitty and people asking questions. You'd never see a child asking the questions. So I started March 2021, 1st of March, I'll never forget it, went to the Department for Education, there was nobody there. I thought, who is running this? There was no one there. In I went, and I thought, what am I going to do? Because I don't want to stand outside of government throwing rocks in. I want to really get kids' voices. So I thought, I know, I'm going to do a survey of England's children. I'm going to ask them, what do you need to thrive coming out of lockdown? Let's ask them. That's what we're meant to do. And while I'm at it, ask them, what do you want for your futures? What are your big dreams? To really capture the voice of young people right across the country. So I enlisted a bit of help. I got Marcus Rashford to help me. It seems like so long ago.
Great move, though.
He was fantastic. He filmed me a little bit of a film and we went around and literally I went round and about the country, into every area of the country, into schools, into youth clubs, into mental health wards, into youth prisons. I talked to kids everywhere and we put this survey out and we got the biggest response in the world for a survey of young people like this. And it was pretty surprising and stunning and shocking, the responses were. But I'm so pleased we did that because then I could go to any minister, any prime minister and say, 500,000 children have told me this or that. And it's knockout. The argument's knockout. I remember Secretaries of State for Education saying, that's it, hands up, okay. We've got to do something.
And what were some of the themes at that point and how were they? I guess, did you think they were mitigated? What did you then bring in as a result of that? What were you able to influence?
Yeah, so some really big things. So it was just as kids were about to go back to school after the second lockdown, which had been a disaster. Like 1st of March, I took over. What did kids want? They wanted to get off their phones and get out and play. Yeah. They talked about the dark labyrinth of social media. They'd been stuck in there. And, so they wanted sustainable things to do, places to go, things they could afford. They wanted to get back to school. There were some most kids were fine, but there were some incredibly vulnerable children. There were children everywhere I went who'd been kept apart from their grandparents, from their relatives. They'd seen people die. I remember sitting with tiny little tots in Bolton saying, 2 people in my family died from COVID. But the worst thing for me, apart from that, was that my park was locked and I couldn't go play. I mean, it sounds but that's kind of visceral for childhood. And then there was so in terms of what young people wanted for their future, so the mental health issues were just thick and fast. I mean, we've seen this massive uptick in mental health concerns of every kind. When I go now, I visit every children's hospital. And when I go to children's hospitals A&E and say, who comes into A&E? And in my head, I was thinking, kids with broken bones. It's not. It's kids, with serious mental health concerns turning up in crisis. It's a real concern. So mental health, which had been an issue that was growing, became a huge issue. And children with anxiety and concerns about going to school. I looked at those back to school figures and I can't help it. I've been a teacher for so long. I was like, there is something seriously wrong here. And I went to the Department for Education. I said, guys, I'm really worried about kids coming back to school. They were like, no, don't worry, it's fine. I was like, it's not fine. How right I was.
Yeah.
And I surveyed, literally got the figures from every area who's missing school. I went to try and find the kids that were missing school, find out why, and try and get policy together on that. So really some really, really big impacts from COVID.
Yeah, wow. And do you think, so I guess in your perspective, then you have as being a teacher for a long period of time, but then also going into that role, we didn't get it right. It's own sense as a government, I guess. What were the most obvious failings, would you say?
We shouldn't have closed schools.
Yeah.
Like, look, the first time schools were closed, everyone was frightened. There was no vaccine. I think that's understandable. I think the second school closure was an unmitigated disaster and shouldn't have happened. Yeah. And frankly, we knew then that kids were basically at very little risk. There are some children who got ill, but in the main, children were at very little risk. And what we should have done is protect the vulnerable, but keep schools open as like critical infrastructure. It's a real mistake we didn't, and kids are still paying the price for that. That generation, that experienced that worries me a lot.
This episode is brought to you in support of Calm, the campaign against living miserably. Calm is a leading UK suicide prevention charity on a mission to help people end their misery, not their lives. We both do things differently. We both know we need to change the conversation around suicide, and that's why together we're both creating space to question the defaults that shape the way we think, feel, and talk about suicide and mental health. We're opening up conversations that remind people, whatever you are facing, you're not alone. Calm has loads of tools and resources available to anyone online to help you find the support that you need, including a life-saving helpline for people open every day from 5 p.m. to midnight, as well as vital online resources for anyone who needs them. So if you or someone you know needs to talk, please visit thecalmzone.net. Thank you for being part of this. And of course, today we may touch on conversations about suicide in this episode. Together, we can question the defaults that keep people silent, smash the stigma around suicide, and help build a world where no one has to face it alone. Thank you. And have we seen interventions as a result of that kind of the closure, the double closure, and then that kind of missing generation, essentially? Like, has government installed any changes?
So look, there were things done. There were attempts at recovery plans, nowhere near enough, and certainly not for long enough. If you look now at the number of children, number of young people who dropped out after school and never went to college because they were in COVID, who are NEET, who are still sitting at home, the mental health, the push on. I mean, we are spending more, for example, on mental health support. As the government is spending more on mental health support, but because mental health needs have skyrocketed so much, it's nowhere near enough. So I don't think anything like the recovery plan that should have been in place was in place. I think it still should be. And I think we should recognise that as a once in a generation. And my goodness, shouldn't we be paying those kids back for what they did for us?
Yeah.
They gave up months of their lives. They got locked away when they didn't need to be. And miss their education, miss many of their milestones. When I look at speech and language milestones of the younger ones and things like that, we absolutely did not do enough, have not done enough, and really could still do more. We've stopped talking about it.
We have, haven't we? Yeah, because I can remember that period of time where, so I wasn't a parent then, and I'm a parent now. I have 2 young children now, 2.5 and 7 months old. But then I can remember I was going on different calls, and you would hear parents visibly struggling with trying to keep up jobs if they were in jobs or they're not on furlough, and then with children kind of running around, chaos. How I don't understand how people did it, but then also at the same time, there was this period of almost acceptance that everyone's in the kind of midst of this chaos. But then after it, it's okay, we're back to normal, but we're not, because there's underlying pressures and issues that have been left behind. And are you seeing that now in schools today?
Yeah, you can see it in all the data. You can see it in and I look at the data because that corroborates what I hear from children. Because I hear, I go speak to children in mental health wards, I speak to children in school, I speak to them. And then I look at the national data and think, So if you look at the uptick on, for example, eating disorders, it's massive. If you look at the huge uptick on children being diagnosed with autism and ADHD, huge uptick on mental health needs. School attendance is no way back to where it should be. Now, okay, I do take the point that schools probably need to be more engaging and do more, but actually most of the children who are not there say to me, I want to be at school, I just cannot get across the door. The kind of anxiety around that. So I'm afraid I do see it, and I'm seeing it everywhere still now.
The neurodiversity is a really interesting point, because I think there has been what appears to be a rise in cases of young people perhaps realizing that or their parents even realizing that they may be neurodivergent. And then we hear the NHS waiting lines and the kind of postcode lottery of access to support.
Yeah.
Are schools well placed to support neurodivergent children today? And where do you think how could they get to that point where actually we have a neuro-inclusive school system?
It's so interesting because, sometimes a diagnosis of autism or you're getting a diagnosis is such a relief to a child and a family. I've been in those clinical situations. I literally made sure I went to see them where watch kids been diagnosed, and literally families feeling that sense of, now we know. But, they've often had to wait for 4 or 5 years to get that diagnosis. But then I think I also have a concern that people are rushing to some are rushing to diagnosis with milder conditions rather than us thinking, the question I'd like us to be asking is, how can we help you? Rather than what is wrong with you.
Yeah.
So, we should be wrapping around nurseries and kindergarten with speech and language support, with the kinds of things, family support, so that we can actually help children achieve and have agency and do the things they are, so that we don't have to focus on diagnosis in the way that we are. At the moment, you have to wait till you get that diagnosis, often 3 or 4 years because of waiting lists. Then you can get an EHCP, which is a health and care plan, education, health and care plan, which will release some funds to get you some support. It's all backwards. I've just come back from a trip to Canada. I've been in Canada, I've been in Australia. All around the Western-speaking world, the Western world, English-speaking world, you will see the same rise in NDD, diagnosis of this, but people are dealing with them in really different ways. In Canada, it's much more, everyone's in their local school, but that local school is prepared and the teachers are trained to support you. They're much more inclusive. I think we really... When I asked 90,000 children with special educational needs, what do you think about school? What do you think about special school? What would you rather do? And they said, do you know what they told me? Unequivocally, it was, we want to go to our local school with our friends. We don't want to be put in a taxi to be sent to a special school 2 hours before when our friends are still in bed, for this massive journey. We want to go to our local school, get our needs met there. Support. I don't want to be in a school that doesn't understand me. I want to get my needs met. Go to my local school, and I don't want a label.
Yeah.
And that's the tricky thing. If I tell you, like, you are a X, I'm going to diagnose you, you are an X, and this is going to have a life-limiting effect on you, and it's going to be like this forever. It's tricky, isn't it?
Totally.
Whereas if I say to you, here are some, right, there are these behaviors, if you try this could work. Anything's possible for you. It's completely different. And we can do this.
Yeah. So I have a diagnosis of ADHD, but I didn't know that during my school years. And one of the first things I said to people very close to me is, I'm glad I didn't know. Because exactly what you've just described, which I think my kind of childhood would have been very different if I had the label. But I also can completely see why the kind of need for realization and, okay, I understand now is important, but it's how it's then met by the systems and the spaces in which young people are spending their time. And also that kind of luck in who your parents are and what they know and how they perceive, this is not the boy standing banging his head against the wall anymore. This is a very particular, very kind of abstract at times set of symptoms that can show very differently to different children. And I think I would have been pushed into a corner and probably not had the life that I had if I didn't. And I can see now how I created my own workarounds, and I needed to be outside and I needed to move. So now I have this in my hand to help stimulate my movement. But I used a similar toy when I was really young, and I had it this whole time. And it meant I could be in classes. But if I was told that, just hold something, I can see I would have got myself out of very particular situations. And I was never confirmed as neurodivergent as a child. I was just a child who needed movement. So I then channeled it into sport or creativity and all these things. So the label was confirming for me when I became a parent, because I was able to then make sense, think about my young people in my life. But I worry for people who are getting that experience, who don't necessarily need the label. They just want their lives slightly readjusted, restructured to be able to live a purposeful, meaningful life with their conditions or their way of thinking. And that's when I then come back, which probably the question I was going on to is the school system in itself. It's very hard to reimagine a system that is so systematic in its structure. We learn a set of principles, but I also worry about how long, are we learning the skills needed for the jobs in the world that we're going into and the conditions that young people are getting? That's a big loaded question.
Fantastic
over to you.
question. It's a fantastic question. Look, one of the first things I'd say is I really believe that every child should be able to go to their local school and get their needs met. And I also know what children tell me, which is, look, I was a head teacher for 30 odd years and would think, I hope that child loves school because they can read Dickens. I mean, I've been a parody myself. Whereas actually, when I survey the children of this country, I've surveyed 1 million of them now, what they want is a great job and a great future. Yeah. And we at school leaders are often singularly unthinking about that. They're often thinking about, let's get them that exam, let's get them through those results, let's get them whatever. So, kids are saying one thing, and they're also saying, look, I understand at school I've got to work hard, I've got to try and pass these exams, I've got to do these things, but I need support. And I need, and also I want to do some of the things I'm interested in, and I'm interested in the future, and I'm interested in whatever. And I do think we need to really stop and think, because we have narrowed in and said, look, this is the curriculum children need to get to be successful, to compete with Singapore, to compete with China. And kids get that. But our education system was always, we got compulsory education. I'm going to take back a long way here. We got compulsory education when the church schools gave their schools to the state back at the turn of the century. And basically, we have always said we believe in social, the spiritual, moral, social, and cultural education of children. And that's the bit I think you're pushing on. Kids being able to, have great friends, have their friendships at school, play outside, learn subjects that they are really interested in, learn about adult life. I can't tell you how many kids talk to me about learning about adult life. And, within the confines of, of course, the school budgets and whatever, be able to find ways to learn that work for them.
Totally.
And we have to do that. But I'll tell you something else.
Yeah, please do.
As a teacher and head teacher for 30 years, I don't think, apart from training I sought out for myself and my own staff, certainly when I was in initial training, I did not get trained in special educational needs or anything around NDD, not one day. So I think we've got kids wanting one thing, and that is incredibly legitimate, and they need those voices heard, and schools thinking often that they're doing something else. Not everyone, lots of schools are different, but children told me all the time, I love music, or I love that particular history lesson, or for me it's sport, or for me, but I'll never forget during lockdown, because that's where we started, this going to Manchester and talking to this group of kids. They were still masked, still separated. They were just back, and they said, "Oh, this is our head boy," and he just looked at me and he said, "During lockdown, my world fell apart." He said, because my football team were everything to me. They were the people I talked to that gave me support. He said, I just didn't know what was going on, and I realised then that what had happened had been cross-cutting, and that we needed to recognise the kind of emotional, social, cultural aspects of school. One of the things I did was phone up Oxford University neuroscientists. Second I got in the job, because I was worried about mental health crisis, how do we get the kids back? And I said, have you got anything? Can you tell me anything that will improve the mental health, of children, that will make them secure from, having real problems after COVID? And she said, the only research we've got that goes into adulthood, the only research that's like cast iron, is having a few really strong peer relationships. I was like, whoa.
Yeah, and then adding to what you said around this need for kind of local access to schooling, you can see how then they're more likely to be in your local community.
Right. And that's why the sport, the fun, the playing together, the hanging out, the making sure that there are things to do, places to go. And
we've lost that magic, haven't we?
Exactly. And recognising that school, when they put kids in bubbles, standing circle, but little girls come up to me and say, crying and saying, I don't know how to make friends anymore. I mean, we really took that from them. And we need to recognise that social side.
Definitely.
But also the aspirations and the dreams and the difference of all our children, and be inclusive and welcome them and find a way to do it. It's a joy, It's a privilege to do as a head.
I can imagine, and I think it is fascinating. Where you say, a lot of young people are wanting these life skills and they're thinking about the future.
Oh yeah,
and it's often not about the courses, but actually, I think if we can do more to harness the strengths, and we often think about those who gain a diagnosis of autism or ADHD, and we then hear around lean into your strengths, and we hear about the most world famous entrepreneurs who've leaned into their strengths, and it's like if we can harness that at that age in the school system, when we know where people's development areas are and where their strengths are, and we have then systems aligned to that with role models, and you can see why everyone wants to be Marcus Rashford. It's the same kind of science is happening here. You see it, you can get yourself to it, and the system works. But actually, when it comes to work, I feel like there's a bit of a tension point. But I think I'm really keen to make sure we talk about I guess the impact of the digital world, which is obviously very, very close to your research and your work. We know the smartphone has kind of completely reimagined and reshaped childhood. I think it's maybe taken away a bit of that kind of social aspect and kind of the nostalgia that I look back at my childhood. But from your research, what are parents worried about? What are young people worried about when it comes to the online world?
So I've done lots of research on the online world with young people, and I've done two major pieces of work around with children about when they first saw, and young people, when they first saw violence online, when they first saw pornography online, look at the negative effects. And sadly, what I have to report to you, so this is 4 years later on from my second piece of work, showed that 25% of 8-year-olds, so we did nationally representative work, 25% of 8-year-olds have seen hardcore serious pornography, have seen violence like beheadings, and parents are, and 50% of 11, 12-year-olds, so many of them spending all their free time online. And again, we've got masses of data on this and how it's, it obviously, if I spend a night looking at that stuff online, I'm going to feel like hell. Yeah. It's obviously affecting how children feel. It's also affecting, I've looked at right down to looking at victims of crime and reading police reports, and you can see, especially when it's children committing the crimes, young people committing the crimes, stuff they're seeing online and acting in life. It really is, some of these deep, dark things are really seeping into our lives, and kids talk to me about this all the time. Girls often our 14, 15-year-olds are the most unhappy. That about that age of teenage girl is where happiness really drops. And them talking about body image, about the things they're seeing, about having to be perfect online, about dieting.
We've seen a rise in suicide risk in a similar age.
Massive rise, and a massive rise in eating disorders, girls and boys. So I think there is, on the one side, we've got this wonderful opening up of the world with the digital world, right? Yeah. It's great. It's exciting. No one has to be bored on a Sunday afternoon like I was, right? And you can always look something up. You don't have to, there's some fantastic things there. But we are paying a very, very high cost. And I talk to children and young people about this all the time, and parents. Pretty much around the age of 9, parents start getting really worried and start phoning me up and saying like, what do I do? What do I do? And the first thing I say to them is, well, how much time do you spend on your phone? Because whatever rules you're going to make for your child, they're going to watch you and learn from you. If you're chatting on your phone all the way through dinner, or you're not mentally present because you're online, your kid's going to pick that up. So, I am quite tough with the parents often, because it's so easy.
Almost look into yourself type thing. Yeah.
So easy to talk about banning things from the kids. They will just turn around and say hypocrite.
Yeah.
So I do think this is a societal thing. It's something, that it's so easy to talk about, let's ban the kids. We know these young brains are developing and they're going to be deeply affected by these things. And it is changing behavior. It's changing sexual behavior. Again, I've surveyed young people, 18 to 21-year-olds about do they think violent sex is a good thing? Have they experienced it? And a lot of them say, oh yeah, see it online. Yeah, it's absolutely right. You would never have said that before you'd sort of experienced that on the online world.
What can we do, would you say? And it's probably the biggest question we can ask. But obviously looking into parents' abilities and their kind of ways in which they create the environments that's then replicated, I can see how that's really, really important space. I agree. And then also I question how much there is for parents to think about. You know what I mean?
So I asked children this question. So as Children's Commissioner, I thought the most important thing that I can do, and if I really do trust what I'm doing, I can ask young people. So I brought hundreds of teenagers into the Department for Education and asked them, what do you wish your parents had known? They were all kids who were about 16 up, so they'd all grown up with tech, the first generation that had grown up with tech. So I said, what do you wish your parents had known? What do you think? What do you think? If you were making a decision about your young sibling, what would you do? Yeah. And they were so practical. First of all, every single one of them, and this is the thing I think we need to recognise, every single one of them had seen awful, horrendous things. They'd all had experiences to tell me, every single one of them. And these were just a range of kids from across London, all different sixth forms of universities. So it's not like, only because your life's bad, you're seeing it, everyone. And their answers were, don't give us phones too young. Let us go out and play, make sure we're going out to play, make sure we're experiencing normal friendships. Don't let us take them to bed at night. Talk to us about, limit our time on them, give us boundaries. We want boundaries, even though we look like we don't. The boys, I couldn't get over the boys. The boys were like, when we come home and our mum asks us, how was your day? And we just go, that isn't a sign not to ask again. Keep asking, because we want you to ask us. And they were like they were afraid to tell their parents when things had gone wrong, because they thought they'd confiscate their phones from them. Yeah. But they actually really wanted their parents to talk to them about what they were seeing and to give them boundaries. And I think there's a huge amount of wisdom in that. It would be very hard to. There are some big societal things, but as a parent, I think those are a really good set of lessons. Look, and it's hard. Nobody wants to be in that situation. Kids said, it's so embarrassing when your dad sits you down or your mum sits you down and does that. We're going to have this talk, son. Yeah. And you want to run out the room. They said, we need age-appropriate conversations regularly. And And I think they wanted that at school as well. So they said, like, at school, we have PSHE lessons, RSHE lessons. I have yet to meet teenagers who think their lessons really good. They're like, the teachers don't know about this. We need, and the kids were like, they need to be up on what we're seeing, up on the online world, but also we want to talk about relationships, we want to talk about adult life, we want to talk about how to make a successful life. And instead, we just get lesson after lesson on consent, taught by the PE teacher on Friday at 4:00. This is one of those areas in the curriculum we've just got to do better.
How much should that fall on teachers? I think it's a very random example, but I think about my daughter's nursery and how they have different experts by different topics that come in on the sub areas, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's only a couple of weeks, but it's on like music, for instance, and they bring in a class and they talk around music, and then one but she always talks about it. So imagine if there was like these different almost characters that could come in and support teachers, like take a bit of weight off. It feels like there's so much that falls on teachers and school when this is a place for education, community, support, and then we throw in every life issue. And I think, yes, children are captive in that time there, Monday to Friday in the most part, we hope. But like, there's a whole world around that and people that I think could help that system.
And curate. See, what the school can do is curate that for safety and for quality.
Yeah.
Because I think what kids do tell me is they trust their teachers. They look to them. They want that advice and guidance from trusted people. I think your point around adult life, careers, gosh, yeah. I mean, if you can see it, you can do it. Yeah. And I think there's so much we could do there. But on this stuff, this very sensitive stuff, they do just wish they were getting better support from all of us, from both schools and from home. So the answer there is hard. It's hard. It is hard to be a parent. It's hard to talk to your teenager about the kind of apps they're on and what they're seeing. And it's hard, but they want you to. And I think that's
an important message to remember, that they want you to start it. Even if you can't, just find a way, start talking about it in whatever tone is right for you.
Just be an idiot. It doesn't matter, does
exactly.
it? It's like,
I'm keen to talk about the pornography piece that you mentioned. Obviously, we've the whole world appears to be seeing Bonnie Blue's content, and obviously you then mentioned about the number of young people who are accessing very kind of graphic pornography and extreme pornography online. And we obviously need to talk about the big tech companies within this. They're the only ones, I think, who can stop this, but it's not happening. Like, who could physically do that? Is there somebody in government that could tell the tech companies this has to stop? Who can? I feel like we hear the same message all the time. Tech companies have to better protect. But even yesterday in The Guardian, I saw a piece around trigger warnings aren't working. The more people see trigger warnings, the more likely are they expect to see the content. And yet trigger warnings are one of the big things that we have seen the tech companies use, and actually it's had the opposite effect. Who can make a difference?
So I have, over the past few years, brought in the tech companies to see me regularly, and they all turn up. I get them around the table. I get them around the table with kids as well. And, talk about denial, total bunch of snakes,
Really?
it's So look, of course they could do something about this. It's great. So the online safety bill's just come in. We fought hard to get it in. It's not a great bill in lots of ways because they pack so many things in it, but it's the only thing we've got. And the tech companies waited right up until the day it was coming in. I called to them for years to say, step up to the piece, take down the stuff the inappropriate things that kids shouldn't be seeing online. Follow up their complaints. Do that. Hardly any movement until the online safety bill came in. That started to make things a bit better. But I tell you what, if you turn X on, I can find you on X, on YouTube, on any of these places, porn in about 15 seconds. And I'm not even looking for it. They should be doing better. When I challenge in private, I get, there isn't the resource, or they don't resource us to do this. These are multi-billion pound companies. And if they want to be in our countries, they should be doing better. And I think we really need to stand up to this on children.
Yeah.
What adults do is up to adults. I'm not there to speak about that. I'm only concerned about what kids are saying. Kids see porn for the first time, most of them on X, then on Snapchat. They see it
Is that the route? I see.
Yeah. They they show it to themselves. Some stumble across it. Some it's a friend showing them it.
Fine.
The tech companies could do so much more. Kids are off. I mean, one of my young ambassadors I had with the tech companies, and he was saying to X, like, "You're not X, you're triple X." Right? You could do better. And that they were getting pushback. You shouldn't be looking at these things. Some of the tech companies were pushing back to kids, and kids were like, "Guys, you should be creating these things so that we don't see it."
Yeah.
At 8 or 9, you don't have a choice. So I think these are multi-billion pound companies. So we've got legislation in place. I think government needs to, be really strong in terms of protection of its children and not cede to overseas governments or people trying to sort of push them about and say, we're going to protect our kids.
What is what's overpowering it? Is it number of jobs it creates? Is it the economic impact of being too rash? Like, what is stopping the government having its control? From someone who's closer than most, what do you say?
So I think there are all sorts of vested interests, and a lot of it is about business. I think, I'm really supporting Ofqual now, trying to take children's voices there and trying to make sure they use their powers to keep children safer. I want to see them do that. I think fundamentally we just need to keep the pressure on so that government will, wear its long trousers and really sort this out a bit. And we need to do that. And we need to do it to help parents. Of course, holding tech companies to account some kid could always get around that, right?
Yeah.
But most won't. So we need the tech companies to do their bit. We need parents to do their bit. We need school to do their bit. This really is a multifaceted thing. And instead, what we get at Westminster is conversations about let's ban phones in school. Now, I surveyed every school in this country. I got over 90% of head teachers responded to me. I looked at all of their phone policies. Vast majority of them are banning or restricting phones. So it's easy for Westminster to say, let's ban phones in school. But when I asked head teachers their biggest worries for children, their second biggest worries after mental health services, their second biggest worry was social media. And where do you watch social media? It's not in school, is it?
Yeah.
So I think schools are pretty much, there might be the odd one, but are pretty much doing what they should be doing.
Yeah.
The issue is what's going on outside, and government never likes to get into telling people what to do with their families. But I think we have to put the warning on about social media. It truly is. The nearest thing to causality of mental health. I know everyone says, the evidence base. It is so close, the causality between spending hours doom scrolling and looking at this stuff and feeling really blooming awful.
Yeah, I think it's
It's there, isn't it? I mean, we don't have 25 years to do a longitudinal study, but come on.
Yeah. Wow, we've covered so much, but we have to talk about AI. I want to kind of squeeze it. So, I mean, AI is obviously transforming everyone's lives, especially young people, in a number of ways. Like, how has AI been a concern or a kind of area of focus for you in your work as of today? But also, looking ahead to the year and a half, 2 years that you have, I'm imagining this is going to be very, very high on your radar for a considerable amount of time and for the next person that comes in. What are your biggest fears for young people, and what do you think the government could be doing to mitigate?
Yeah. Look, first off, there's a side of AI that's so exciting, and kids are really excited by it, just like we are, and our lives have been transformed, aren't we? Where we can use our AI to look things up, and there's some really exciting functions there, and jobs done quickly. But I have seen some worrying things. I mean, one of the big things I'm deeply concerned about is nudifying apps. Yeah. And I've done a big piece of work on that. Just talking to girls, because it's mainly focused on girls, just about, we did a nationally representative piece of work that showed girls are more worried about being put in a nudifying app, being caught and put in a nudifying app, than they are about walking home late at night. It's that, and the numbers of them, the massive numbers of them who've seen themselves or a female teacher in a nudifying app is huge. Now, just you tell me, on what planet is a nudifying app good for anything? Why are we not just banning them? I cannot see something that is there literally to put your head on a false body and to use it to harass you.
Who could ban that, out of interest?
Government.
right now. They could, in theory, couldn't they? There would be they wouldn't need a process around it.
Just do it. Just do it. Make it this could be this is where the Online Safety Act was created so that you could add things to it, as tech changed. I mean, do we tell me one good reason? If you could give me one good reason not to ban it, one good reason not to, I challenge anyone to give me one good reason not to, that there isn't, something horrible.
Yeah,
so those things are concerns to me, and they are really impacting on young women. And again, girls more and more are a group, and boys actually, who, when I talk in private to teenagers, they will talk to me about the massive influence of online influencers, the massive influence of misogyny, how it's affecting both boys and girls in different ways, but equally badly. And girls, this nudifying app is like a symptom of that. And as adults, again, we don't know the world we live in. We look at Bonnie Blue and think, good Lord, that's awful. Where did that come from? But actually, get into those online influencer worlds, you will see that and 20 times worse. And do you know what? Adults think the kids aren't watching it. I was talking to a senior educationalist the other day and asked them, has your child talked about Bonnie Blue? And they were like, no, they've never seen it. I talked to the child. They were like, yeah, of course I've seen it, and so has everyone. It's horrible. Shouldn't be allowed. And I think we forget that teenagers live in a secret world, and they are really been affected by this.
Thank you so much for coming on. In this 18-month window that you now have, what's the most important thing that's front of mind that you hope to achieve?
I don't want any law, any policy, anything that government does or public service does about children to be done without hearing from them. Whether that is mental health law, that we've got a new mental health bill going through, whether that is, laws around social media, they should be listening to children. I never want children to experience what they did, to watch people closing their schools, doing all these things, and never hearing for them. I've tried to change that, and we must. And I want to hear from another million children. I've heard from 1 million already. I want to hear from another million, and I want to batter down the doors of Parliament to make sure that they listen to them.
Well, thank you for everything that you have done since being in role. And thank you again for coming on the show. I mean, there's 1,000,001 things that I feel like we could continue talking about. But I know you've got an incredibly busy evening coming up and a busy day so far. But massive thank you. And yeah, really intrigued to see, I guess, what you're going to do next as well is quite exciting. And also, I guess, how government reacts to some of these quite significant changes that are happening in the world of tech and AI. I think it is a time that we've never faced, but also this period of turbulence is going to be the norm. And we know that we're going to see constant change. Actually, how are we preparing our young people and our teachers and our parents to cope with constant, fast, turbulent change? And how do we then position our young people's lives to actually harness their strengths? I think, you have definitely contributed to that. And I think, from the outset, bringing in Marcus Rashford to partner with yourself and to get that number of responses shows the innovation and creativity that you and your team have brought in to get to that point. We need more of that. We need to meet children where they're at, and we need their role models alongside them to do that. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much. It was an absolute privilege to be here and to talk about the most important things.
Thank you. Rachel spoke with such honesty about the scale of what children have been through, from the disruption of lockdown and the mental health crisis that then followed, and how easy it is as adults to underestimate the long-term impact of those years. And perhaps we don't really know the true impact. A few things for me stood out and I'll never forget. First, her belief that no law or policy about children should ever be made without hearing directly from them. Of course, that feels so obvious, yet it still doesn't happen enough. Second, the data that she shared on social media and online harm was shocking. But her message wasn't just about fear, it was about responsibility. As parents, educators, and as a society, we need to model healthy behaviour, set boundaries, and demand more from the tech companies shaping young minds. And finally, her point about education, that every single child should be able to go to their local school, get their needs met, and leave with the skills and confidence to build a good life, not just pass exams. What I took from Rachel is that childhood has changed faster than any of us have realised. And if we don't evolve the systems around it, we'll lose something really important, perhaps the essence and meaning of childhood. We, of course, did touch on the importance of neurodiversity conversations that we have to be having. And for me, the school system has to change. We have to look quite deeply into the processes and system of our schools. Are we preparing young people for the world of work, but also the society that they are going to grow up in? Thank you so much for listening. And if this episode made you stop and think about how we're shaping the world for the next generation, I'd love for you to share it with your friends, family, colleagues, and perhaps anyone that you think might be interested and this might resonate with. Your support really does mean a lot at this stage. Thank you so much.